I heard a loud crack that made me spill my coffee. When I ran outside, I saw dust flying everywhere, a big yellow digging machine, and 3 HOA board members in folding chairs watching like it was a 4th of July parade. My dam was gone. Completely destroyed. Karen even wore a ribbon that said, "Water belongs to the HOA." I just stood there in my pajamas, looking at the machine that had just destroyed the only thing keeping their houses safe from flooding. That's me. You're wondering how I got here, right? They say you only really know your neighbors when you build something they don't like. For me, that happened after I finished my dam. It wasn't a big concrete wall, just a strong dirt dam with stone walls and a water gate that I built myself over 3 years. Every rock and log was put there for a reason, based on water flow reports and talks with my uncle who used to build dams for the Army. My land is on top of a hill above Oak Hollow Estates, a fancy neighborhood with identical houses and flower beds where only 2 types of mulch are allowed. What those people never realized is that their whole neighborhood is built in a place that naturally floods every 5 to 7 years. That was before I bought the land and built channels to control the water. My dam was the final piece, made to hold back the rainwater and let it out slowly through pipes and drains. It worked perfectly. The funny thing? They didn't even know the dam existed for 2 years. But when Karen moved in and became HOA president, she started noticing things, like how her garden wasn't washing away in April anymore, and how the small stream in her yard wasn't flooding. She knew something had changed but didn't understand why. That was dangerous. I knew trouble was coming when she showed up at my fence wearing white pants and fancy shoes, with a face that looked like she just tasted something sour. "I'm here about that structure," she said, pointing vaguely toward my dam, which she couldn't even see from where she stood. "It doesn't match the natural look of our neighborhood." I calmly told her that my land wasn't part of her neighborhood, I wasn't under HOA rules, and I had permits from the county, the water district, and the soil office. "I'm still concerned about safety," she said, narrowing her eyes. "If there's no water there, what are you trying to hold back? You built something that doesn't need to exist. And that makes it suspicious." That word, suspicious, hung in the air like smoke. Over the next month, I got 17 violation notices from the HOA. Each one was more ridiculous than the last. Unauthorized earth moving, unapproved water control, disrupting neighborhood views. I wasn't even a member of their HOA. Yet they fined me $300 for causing water confusion. I framed that notice. Then they sent letters threatening to report me to county officials, environmental agencies, even federal emergency management. I sent back official responses with copies of all my approval documents, with important parts marked in red. That's when they started putting flyers in everyone's mailbox, warning about the shadow reservoir on private land. The uncontrolled water being used without permission. They made it sound like I was going to cause a biblical flood. I could have sued them for lying about me, but I didn't. I waited. I put up cameras. I kept records. And I kept the gate on the dam locked with a chain I welded shut. Then one weekend I had to leave town. My cousin got married in Montana and I wanted to be there. Before I left, I checked everything, made sure the spillways were clear, added gravel to strengthen the edges, and made sure the backup drain pipe was working. I even left a sign that said, "Private property. No trespassing. Cameras are watching." I was only gone for 48 hours. When I got back, something felt wrong. You know when you open your fridge and smell something bad but can't tell what it is? That's how it felt walking toward the hill. Everything was too quiet. My boots crunched on gravel as I walked up the slope. When I reached the top, my stomach dropped. The dam was completely gone, bulldozed flat like it never existed. All that was left was a hole in the ground, a pile of broken rocks, and one twisted piece of the water gate sticking up from the mud like a gravestone. I could see tire tracks leading back to the HOA neighborhood. Big tracks from construction equipment. I stood there for 5 minutes, mouth dry, ears ringing. Then I saw it. A plastic sign stuck on a stake, flapping in the wind. It said, "Removal of unauthorized structure according to Section 8.3 of the Oak Hollow Estates Rules." No signatures, no date, just an HOA heading and a list of approved actions. My face got hot with anger. I wanted to scream, but instead I turned and walked to where I had put my first camera. It was gone. Ripped off the tree with the mounting bracket hanging loose. I checked the second camera. Same thing. The third one was smashed with a rock, but I had backups. Hidden recorders inside the dam's control box. What those cameras recorded made my blood run cold. The video showed 2 men in orange vests with no company logos, cutting the chain on the water gate with big cutters. Then a rented bulldozer came into view and started smashing the base of the dam. Karen stood nearby, wearing her HOA badge like she was some kind of sheriff, giving orders and drinking iced coffee. Clear it all. This place is ugly, she said on the recording. If he wanted to build a water holder, he should have asked us first. Ask them? This was my land, my permits, my work, and she treated it like I had put up an ugly lawn ornament. I saved the footage on a flash drive, printed all my permit papers again, and drove straight to the county offices. Over the next few days I filed reports. I called my water engineer. I had experts check the damage. It would cost over $42,000 to rebuild. And that didn't include the environmental damage or the danger to properties downstream. Because here's the thing, the dam wasn't just a pond. It was a protector. It held back 170,000 gallons of potential flood water from rushing downhill into a neighborhood built on clay soil with old drainage pipes and no protection walls. And rainy season was just 2 weeks away. It started with light rain like it always does, the kind that taps on your windows like a friend. But I knew better. I had been watching the weather reports and satellite data closely, and I could tell this wasn't going to be normal rain. A warm air mass from the south had hit a cold system over our valley, and the forecast showed 7 days of non-stop rain, the kind that only happens once every 10 years. And this time the dam wasn't there to protect them. My fingers tapped nervously on the kitchen table as the rain got stronger, hitting my metal awning like gunfire. It had been 6 days since I discovered my destroyed dam. And even though I filed police reports, environmental violation notices, and county complaints, nothing had happened. No fine, no citation. The county engineer's office just gave me a weak apology and told me to go to small claims court. Meanwhile, the HOA had gone completely silent. No response to my certified letters, no explanation for illegally destroying my dam, just a smug silence behind their freshly washed fences and perfect hedges. I sat by the window and watched the dark clouds roll in like an invasion. By the second day the ground was soaked. By the third day my gravel path had turned to mush. I walked the ridge every morning wearing my raincoat, my boots sinking into what used to be my trail. Water was pooling in places it never did before, filling the holes left by the bulldozer that destroyed my dam. I had put up temporary dirt barriers to slow the water, but they weren't meant to handle this much. Without the dam's holding pool to slow the water, every raindrop that hit my hillside was now rushing straight down into Oak Hollow Estates, a neighborhood that, according to their own newsletters, was proud of its elegant drainage solutions and shared responsibility. I almost felt bad for them. Almost. On the fourth night, at exactly 2:37 a.m. it happened. A deep, wet cracking sound echoed through the darkness like a tree breaking in a storm. I jumped out of bed, heart racing, and ran to the window. Even through the heavy rain, I could hear the rumbling sound of earth moving. I quickly put on my boots, grabbed a flashlight, and stumbled out into the mud. And there, down the hill, I saw it. Water, not dripping, not pooling, but charging forward. A huge wave of brown, churning water tearing through the edge of the HOA neighborhood like a mudslide in a disaster movie. I ran to the lookout point and what I saw made me freeze. The decorative wall behind Karen's cul-de-sac, built from fake stone and pride, had broken off completely at the bottom. A 30-foot chunk now lay halfway down the slope, broken like a dropped plate. Behind it, her perfect backyard, which used to have a gazebo and fish pond, was now a mud pit with patio chairs floating like abandoned toys. The street below was even worse. Water had taken over the main road, carrying mulch, trash cans, and who knows what else down the asphalt river. Driveways were underwater, cars covered up to their mirrors. I watched a garden gnome get shot like a missile into someone's front window. It would have been funny if it wasn't so terrible. I ran back inside and grabbed my camera, recording everything. I filmed the broken wall, the water flow, the buckling sidewalks and burst drain covers. And then I filmed a "for sale" sign floating down the hill like it was on a lazy river ride. By morning the place looked like a disaster zone. Emergency workers arrived just as the sun broke through the clouds, shining golden light on complete suburban destruction. Karen was on her lawn in a pink bathrobe, screaming into her phone as 2 firefighters waded through her front yard with a rubber boat. Her flowers were underwater, her mailbox was gone, and her eyes met mine across the flooded area with the look of someone who just realized they'd picked a fight with the wrong person. I waved at her. That afternoon, while the HOA board huddled in the community center trying to figure out what to do about the damage, something even better happened. The county emergency manager showed up with a clipboard and yellow boots. She looked around with the efficiency of someone used to real disasters, not fancy neighborhoods. And then she did something I didn't expect. She walked straight up the hill and knocked on my door. "Mr. Allen?" she asked, wiping rain from her glasses. "Are you the owner of Parcel 83B?" I nodded cautiously. You had a private water control structure on this slope, right? I invited her inside and showed her the evidence, before and after pictures of the dam, the permits, the plans, the documentation, the drone scans, and the video of the HOA illegally destroying it. She didn't say much, just took lots of notes. This flooding has triggered a flood zone reclassification, she finally said, closing her notebook. That means higher insurance costs, infrastructure repairs, environmental cleanup. Big money, big responsibility. I tilted my head. You think the HOA is responsible? She looked up. Oh, they're already blaming you. My eyebrows shot up. Me? Yes, she said flatly. They filed a complaint with the county this morning saying that you removed a critical water barrier without approval, causing catastrophic community damage. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. That was my dam on my land with my permits. I know, she said, turning a page in her notebook. And that's why this just got interesting. Within 24 hours, the story had completely changed. HOA emails went out accusing me of unauthorized land changes, and Karen posted a long error-filled rant on the neighborhood app calling me a reckless water expert wannabe who endangered our community for personal gain. People were talking about me on the neighborhood Facebook page. They called me Dam Man, like I was some kind of wetland superhero. But here's where it got delicious. By trying to blame me, the HOA had accidentally admitted that removing the dam had caused the flood damage. That was powerful evidence. Because if they claimed it was the missing dam that caused the damage, then they had admitted the dam was necessary, which made destroying it without permission not just a mistake but deliberate negligence. Their own words were becoming the rope they would hang themselves with. I uploaded everything to online storage and sent copies to my lawyer. She was already preparing a counter lawsuit. Meanwhile, the residents of Oak Hollow were starting to figure things out. A crowd gathered at the community center when they learned that the HOA might be the reason their basements were now swimming pools. One man, a quiet mortgage broker named Vince, stood up and demanded to know why the board had authorized changing the land without a vote. Karen tried to talk around the question, but it was clear the mood had shifted. The residents were angry. Their homes were soaked. Their insurance companies were asking difficult questions. And Karen? Karen looked like someone trying to stop a flood with a rake. The storm had passed, but the judgment was just beginning. They filed their lawsuit exactly 9 days after the flood. Hand-delivered certified letter, in a fancy folder with gold lettering like it was a wedding invitation instead of a declaration of war. The Oak Hollow Estates Homeowners Association was suing me for gross negligence, property damage, and reckless modification of terrain leading to catastrophic community loss. I read the packet 3 times standing barefoot in my kitchen. The sound of rain still dripping from the gutters outside like a final reminder. They were blaming me for the flood. Me. The one person who'd spent 3 years building a solution to the very problem they had just created with bulldozers and ego. According to their fantasy story, I had abandoned my water control structure, allowed it to fall apart, and then intentionally removed it without notifying the proper authorities, resulting in uncontrolled water release. They even included carefully selected satellite images, taken after they had destroyed the dam, as proof of my non-compliance. They had no idea what was coming. I called my lawyer, Sarah, the same woman who helped me file the original dam permits. She laughed so hard I thought she was going to choke on her coffee. "They're suing you?" she said. "This is a gift. I haven't seen a legal mistake this bad since that time a town board built a dog park over a buried septic tank." I met with her the next morning. We spread everything out on her big oak table. The permits stamped by 3 separate agencies. The engineering plans signed by a licensed water expert. The land surveys with elevation maps. And the photos, dozens of them. I had before and after drone footage, security camera images, time-stamped video of the HOA workers cutting the chain on the water gate, even audio of Karen saying, "Clear it all. This place is an eyesore." The best evidence? A thermal drone scan from 3 weeks earlier, showing the water flow patterns with the dam intact. Sarah stared at it like it was a priceless painting. "We're not just going to fight this," she said, eyes gleaming. "We're going to bury them in it." So we filed a counter lawsuit. We claimed illegal destruction of a permitted structure, trespassing, destruction of private property, violation of local flood management regulations, and most importantly, interfering with an engineered water control system during a high-risk rainy season. We sent legal demands to the workers who operated the bulldozer. Turns out they were just landscapers hired from Craigslist for cash. They had no licenses, no insurance, and claimed Karen told them it was just a decorative dirt pile. One of them testified under oath that he'd asked, "Shouldn't we get the owner's permission first?" and was told, "He doesn't live here. He'll thank us later." The court date was set for 3 weeks later. The HOA, to their credit, doubled down. They held an emergency meeting where Karen told residents I was trying to extort the community with fake science and revenge lawsuits. She made it sound like I had removed the dam to punish them. But more and more homeowners were starting to talk among themselves. Insurance investigators were everywhere. 6 houses had been declared temporarily unlivable. Mold was already growing in walls. One family had to live in a motel. The insurance rates were rising quickly. Then came the knockout blow. The County Flood Control Board released an official statement after doing their own investigation. It confirmed, in very formal language, that the removal of the private water retention structure significantly contributed to the severity of the flooding experienced by residents in the Oak Hollow Estates development. In simple terms, the dam was important. And I wasn't the one who removed it. That finding didn't just support my counter-lawsuit. It opened the door to something much bigger. Legal responsibility. Karen and her friends had authorized the removal of a registered flood protection structure without a court order or county notification. That's not just breaking the rules. That's almost criminal negligence. We walked into court a month later dressed like we were going to a funeral, because we were. Their lawyer tried to paint me as a crazy landowner with a god complex. Someone who had built a dam for ego, not safety, and then deliberately destroyed it during the rainiest month of the year. But Sarah was ready. She played the drone footage on a big screen for the jury, showing the dam intact 1 week, gone the next, followed by dramatic footage of the mudslide that tore through Karen's backyard like a bulldozer made of soup. Then she passed around laminated copies of my permits. Highlighted, dated, signed. Then came the killer evidence, a copy of the HOA's own meeting minutes where they authorized the demolition. Someone on the board, bless them, had written the phrase, "Take care of the dam issue while he's gone," in the summary. The courtroom went completely silent when the judge read that aloud. Karen shifted in her seat like someone sitting on something hot. When we brought the contractor up for questioning, it got even worse. "Did you have permission from the landowner to demolish the dam?" Sarah asked. "No." "Did you have any documents from the county authorizing it?" "No." "Did you tell anyone at the HOA that you didn't think it was legal?" "Yes. I told the blonde lady." "And what did she say?" He cleared his throat. "She said, and I quote, 'This whole neighborhood's on our side. He's just some loner with a hill and a grudge.'" The jury didn't look confused. They looked angry. The final ruling came down 2 weeks later. The judge dismissed the HOA lawsuit completely, citing lack of merit, malicious intent, and, his words, gross procedural misconduct. Then came the ruling on our counter-lawsuit. They were found responsible on 4 counts: illegal demolition, property damage, environmental code violation, and negligent contribution to neighborhood flooding. The HOA was ordered to pay damages: $187,000 for structural loss, $62,000 for environmental remediation, $13,000 for legal fees, and an additional $50,000 in punitive damages for good measure. I walked out of the courthouse with a check for more than I'd spent building the dam. But money wasn't the real win. The win was what came next. Karen was removed as HOA president within a week. A petition went around calling for the resignation of the entire board. 3 members stepped down, 1 moved out of state. The HOA voted to create a new oversight committee to prevent one-sided decisions. And best of all, my land was reclassified as an environmental protection zone, untouchable by HOA regulation. No more notices. No more pink clipboards. No more laminated threats left on my gate. Just peace and gravity and water where it belonged. I never expected the end of a war to be so quiet. No hammer bang, no applause, no celebration. Just the soft sound of dirt being moved and the steady thump of shovels as a dozen neighbors worked together to rebuild what ignorance had tried to erase. My dam. The same one the HOA once called a danger to community aesthetics rose again, stone by stone, under a sky no longer threatening. This time it wasn't just me stacking the rock wall or measuring the angles. It was Vince from Lot 9 who used to ignore me at the feed store. It was Martha who lost her herb garden to the flood. It was even the Martinez twins, whose basement was still being cleaned for mold, handing me metal bars like they were making up for something. Nobody talked about the trial, not out loud. But the weight of what had happened could be felt in the way people moved, in how careful their steps were. There was a new respect now for the land, for the water, and, surprisingly, for me. It was strange being thanked for something I'd once been cursed for, but that's how it goes in small-town America. 1 month you're the crazy hillbilly with a doomsday bunker, and the next you're the guy who saved everyone's houses. Time and floodwaters have a way of washing away bad reputations. The county had issued its final ruling just 2 weeks earlier. Not only had the HOA lost their case and been found responsible, but the judge, clearly fed up with their nonsense, had also referred them for review to the state attorney general's office. That bonus investigation uncovered years of mismanaged dues, secret contractor deals, and enough rule violations to cover a courthouse wall. It turned out Karen had been giving landscaping contracts to her nephew's company at 3 times the normal price. The flood-friendly mulch campaign they started last year? A scam. The emergency water basin fund? Empty, spent on administrative meals and educational retreats. There were legal demands, interviews, audits. I didn't need to do anything. The system had teeth this time, and it finally decided to bite. Karen tried to spin it, of course. Blamed the board. Blamed misunderstood intentions. At one point she claimed I hacked the HOA emails to frame her, but the receipts didn't lie, and neither did the digital trail leading straight to her PayPal account labeled HOA Executive Consulting Fees. The HOA was officially dissolved at the end of that month. County inspectors had declared them functionally compromised and administratively negligent. What that meant in real terms was beautiful. No more dues, no more violations, no more laminated notices about mailbox colors or yard fungus. The power that once flowed through their rules now dripped uselessly into a pile of revoked charters and unpaid legal bills. And speaking of unpaid bills, those didn't disappear when the HOA did. The civil court held board members personally responsible for the damages not covered by insurance or the HOA's defunct budget. Karen, Richard, and 2 other members were ordered to pay a combined payment package totaling $211,000. Karen appealed twice. Lost both times. By the time it was over, she'd mortgaged her home, emptied her savings, and put her precious BMW up for private auction just to stay afloat. It wasn't enough. A month after the judgment, a for sale sign appeared on her front lawn. And not a quiet, dignified one. No, it was one of those bright orange motivated seller is signs that screamed desperation louder than a fire alarm. She got maybe 40% of what the house had been worth last year. Rumor was she took a job in some flat suburb outside Tulsa. Last I heard, she was moderating a Facebook group about HOA free living and complaining about squirrels. As for me, I rebuilt. Not just the dam but the trust. I hosted a cookout during the first dry weekend after the final wall went in. People showed up with casseroles, coolers, and apologies. We sat on folding chairs around the ridge and looked down into the valley. Quiet now, peaceful. You could still see faint outlines of where the flood had carved its way through the streets, patches of new concrete, mismatched siding, grass growing back in odd patterns. But nature heals. So do people if you give them reason to. A few days later, I installed the new sign. I bolted it into a thick post just beside the spillway, where the water trickled calmly into the downstream pipe. Simple aluminum plaque, weatherproofed, black letters on silver background. It read, "Next time ask the guy who understands gravity." Below it, in smaller font, I added the dam specifications, water capacity, and the county permit number. No ego, just facts. The flood made believers out of all of them. Even the HOA diehards who never admitted they were wrong started walking their dogs past the dam with subtle nods and tighter leashes. One even left me a thank you note. No name, just, "You were right. We're sorry." Now every time the clouds gather and the forecast calls for storms, I sleep just fine. Not because I trust the weather but because I trust what I built and who I built it with. There's something beautiful in that. This little patch of land, once a battleground of pettiness and paperwork, now breathes easy again. The creek flows, the soil holds, the frogs are back, and so are the kids, splashing in the shallow water like nothing ever happened. But they remember.